It was as if all her insides had been pulled in a knot, and suddenly the force pulling them tighter disappeared. The footsteps grew louder, and the swooshing sound of Sion's hands sliding across the prison wall reached Sestroya's ears. The door to his cell creaked open and then banged shut. He was back. In no more than a few seconds, she could hear the quiet scratching of his cockroaches marching across the wall and spreading their corrosive drool. Sestroya pressed her body against the wall and whispered, "Sion." He didn't respond. "Are you okay? You've been gone longer than usual. Why?" No answer, just the scratching. "Sion. Sion, have they done something to you? Meet my hand." She lay down and reached out through the hole, but he did not. What was wrong? What have they done? Was it medical? Was he ill? In their conversation about the sins of Mem, Sion had said one more thing. "We will turn back one disaster, but Mem will not change. Everything we've learned will be forgotten." Sometimes I tried not to wonder if it's worth it, she had finished for him. It was one of the unspoken thoughts they had shared for years. And she had told him then, "Of course it is. Everything is finite. It can all end in a blink. But we still do anything we can to take care of those we love, whether they have a year or a century left, whether or not they make mistakes." It was true enough. No matter what, she had to remember that it was worth it. Chill. It was the first thing her senses grabbed onto. She was kneeling on fresh grass, shaded by lush tree crowns. Sestroya inhaled sharply and nearly choked on the uncontaminated air. Though the memories from both timelines were equally fresh in her mind, her body had been stuck in the scorched world for the past 12 years. She grabbed 2 fistfuls of grass and fell forward, bursting into tears. In that moment there was nothing else. No time travel, no spells, no mission. Just this place, the few blades of grass she held onto for dear life. She watched as Sion's name appeared on the surface of the flat white stone. The contraption, whatever it was, did not obey the rules of timelines, accepting changes despite everything around it being undone. But the rock powering it was nowhere to be seen. The air around the stone became distorted and slowly shaped into Sion's silhouette. "Hi." "Hello." They looked at each other with gentle smiles. "I can't believe this," he said. "Agreed." They gave themselves a moment to comprehend, or at least get a semblance of a grip. They considered going to Mem and telling everyone to leave. It was a backup plan. But doing so would go against fate's wish to revert the changes, and instead of creating some kind of an acceptable timeline, they could accidentally concoct a hell of the freshest variety. They couldn't be that reckless. A suspect path of broken branches and fresh green leaves, likely left by Agare who had spawned here earlier, led them only as far as the river. The court knew no loyalty, and just as it had hidden their tracks before, so it now cut their hand short. Maybe it was for the best. They had no means to confront that man right away. Sitting by the fire, drinking water boiled in a bucket, stolen from the Mem's playground of all places, and eating more pilfered corn than their stomachs would forgive, Sestroya and Sion talked the night away. It was helpful in processing what had happened, what they'd done, what they had to do moving on. The year was 225. The moment it had reached them that they had 22 years before the original timeline perished, everything just slid off them. The rush, the stress of the chase, the pressure of time, it was all gone. and they decided to spend the day just eating, talking, planning, unwinding. Especially since the next step was crossing the border to Dardenne. And the sooner the better. Life was too unpredictable. Any number of things could ruin everything. They considered gathering proper supplies, but even traveling to other borderland towns carried a significant risk of being recognized. In the end, it just wasn't worth it. Killing a man. Sestroya shut her eyes, trying to imagine the goal of their task. We're not murderers, Sion. I don't think I could do it, despite everything. We have no other option. But, in a way, we won't have murdered him at all, Sion said. The moment he dies, this reality will cease to exist. True. Maybe it will be easier than it seems. Maybe. With nothing to carry but some corn cobs and the clothes on their backs, they managed to sneak through the Dardanian border undetected by taking a difficult mountain path. The journey was exhausting, but safe, all things considered. The true hardships, without doubt, awaited them on the other side of the pass. Beyond the mountains lay a flat, desolate stretch of land, a stone desert cut by train tracks going from the settlements to the nearby mines. Where the desert ended, crop fields began, and those went on for miles and miles. Ses and Sion traveled through the waste for 2 days before they reached the first bits of civilization. As much as the notion scared them, they knew that to find any settlement, they had to use the trains. And no matter the path they chose, eventually they had to interact with the locals. In the distance, a freight train was being loaded by a dozen or so workers. During their trek, Sestroya had worried about their slave clothes and if they wouldn't stand out too much from the crowd, but seeing the locals dispersed any such worries. The attire of the slaves barely differed from the garbs of the people loading the minerals into the train cars. Exchanging nothing but a look meant to lift one another's spirits, Sestroya and Sion started walking towards the station. They didn't know a lot about Dardenne. It was a hostile, secretive nation, and people of Mem didn't like to speak of it too often, frankly. But they did know Dorhan. While in the past Sestroya used to get angry at her teachers for making her speak the filth, the adults knew that understanding the language of your enemy was usually more important than speaking the tongue of your ally. No Dardanian would ever extend them the courtesy of a wacky pantomime. Throughout most of the year, Dardenne was hunted by strong winds, and even in Hator, the warmest month of the year, the air on the other side of the mountain pass was significantly colder, hence the stone barrier that surrounded the waiting area of the train station. The freight train waiting on the tracks was not built to transport passengers, but people were climbing onto it anyway, sitting on ledges that went alongside the vehicle's sides. It wasn't just a few daredevils that did it either. The ledges were beginning to fill up. Sion and Sestroya looked at each other. What choice did they have? Wait here for a passenger train? Who the hell knew they even existed around here? Dardenne was a different world, and they had to stop looking at it through their outsider lenses. What was an unacceptable hazard beyond the border? Here might have been the proper way of doing things. Nobody paid them any attention as they approached the vehicle and climbed onto the ledge. "You're not from here, are you?" Suddenly the older man who sat beside Sestroya spoke up. Her breath hitched. She faced the Dardanian, but her mind refused to form a response. The man smiled. The corners of his grey eyes wrinkled, creating friendly-looking crow's feet. He was around 50, maybe 60 years of age. "You look terrified and confused out of your mind," he said. "It's a dead giveaway of any foreigner who ends up here." "Don't worry, it's fine. We're not in the business of plucking the crows. If you came here, you must have a good reason, and I'm sorry it happened to you. I'm Zin." Fighting through the fear that clutched her throat, Sess replied with the only thing she could think of. "Sestroya, and this is Sion." The train whirred and made a sound announcing its departure. "Where is this train going?" Sion asked the man. "That doesn't matter to you," Zin said. "If you want to survive, and I assume you do, you will come with me on another one, and I will take you to the Arata." "Arata?" "A place for people like us." "What's wrong with your hand?" the enigmatic man asked Sestroya. She opened her palm. The wound didn't get much better, but she got numb to the pain. "I burned it." "It looks infected. We'll have to do something about it when we're home." "But why would you care?" Zin tilted his head. "Welcome to Dardena, a place where if you're not together, you're dead. If I don't help you, I'll have blood on my hands. I don't like that idea." Thank you." Nothing was going as expected. Could they trust this man? Probably not. They had nothing to steal, but he might well take them somewhere they'll get killed, enslaved, chopped up for parts, gods knew. But as they rode through the expanse of the desert, and then through the fields heated up by webs of amethyst soil-warming installations, it truly reached them how huge and foreign this country was, how little they knew about it. There was one thing they could trust Zin on. They could not survive in here alone. They didn't know any of the rules. "Sess," Sion whispered to her ears so she could hear him over the rumble of the moving train. "How are we going to find one man in this entire country? These fields alone are bigger than the entire borderlands." "I don't know," she said. "By searching. If there's one thing we have right now, it's time." No, I don't know what I was thinking at all." Sion shook his head in disbelief. "It felt like we'd come here, struggle for a month, if even, and then we'll confront him." "But it won't take months, will it? It could take years." He was right. The notion of living in Dardena for so long was so absurd it neared abstraction, and so they hadn't even considered it before. It was all about the confrontation, the final resolution, with very few words spoken about the seemingly irrelevant journey. "We have to succeed," Sess. "No matter what happens, I can't let her live through that nightmare." Nelana, of course. Remembering her life from the second timeline, and then realizing that, as it was right now, it had all been splashed with white paint in the book of history. Sestroya felt elated. "I know, we won't let it happen again," she said, and she meant it. At this moment in time, she truly, truly did. She took Sion's hand into her healthy one and gave it a squeeze. Then, after a moment of poignant silence, she added, "It will not be easy. Let's make a deal, Sion. Whenever one of us begins to lose hope and starts to doubt that we can succeed, the other must pick up the pieces. We will fall apart in turns and then get back up in turns. This way, we cannot fail." "Deal," Sion agreed, but his eyes were stuck in the distance.